Thank you, Reverend Francie. A young man, age 14, who lived in the country all his life, and he with his parents, and they had an outhouse to the house, and he was always not too fond of the outhouse. It was cold in the winter, it was hot in the summer, and it really smelled. You're right, some has experienced that before. So he said to himself many times over the years, he just thought in his mind, he said, one of these days I'm going to knock that darn outhouse over. Well, there was a creek that ran through their property, and it was not too far, the outhouse was not too far from the creek. One day, the rains came and filled up the creek quite well, and the outhouse was pretty close to the creek then, so he decided this is the day. So he went out there and he knocked over that outhouse. And come evening time, when they were sitting at dinner, his dad looked at him and said, "Son, we're going out to the woodshed after dinner." And everybody knows what that means. He was old enough, so it means you're going to get a spanking. And so he said, "Why is that, Dad?" He said, "Son, you knocked over the outhouse." And he said, "Well, you know what, Dad? George Washington cut down the tree, the cherry tree, and his dad, once he told him he did it, forgave him." He said, "Son, George Washington's father was not in the tree."
Okay.
I see it going. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to tell you a true story. My dad, of course, he was raised in the time of an outhouse, and before we get started with today's lesson of love, is he had, when you're kids, and you're being taught how to use an outhouse, you're small. Well, his mom, my grandmother, had him out there, and she did drop him once down in the hole. Thank goodness, though, that she decided to clean him up instead of leave him down there, or I wouldn't be here. I'm sure my family's not the only one that happened to. Now, come on now. All right, let's say our statements of truth together. I am a child of God.
I am deserving good now. I am accepting my good now.
Today's lesson is on love. It's the third lesson of the Advent season. And I want to begin with a Bible verse that I'm sure that all of y'all have heard, either in this form or another. And now abides faith, hope, and love. But of these, the greatest, I tell you, is love. And that was from 1 Corinthians 13:13, and that where it comes from is meaningful, and who wrote it is meaningful, and where Paul, who wrote it, got that idea is meaningful. We're going to go over all that because we've all heard that, I'm sure, in some form or another, that quote before. And we may have attributed it, many people in fact attribute it to Jesus. But today I want to talk about the power of love, and the power of love is one of the Advent, what I call the Advent four: faith, peace, love, and next week, joy, which Reverend Francie will be talking about. According to the Bible quote, this Bible quote that I told you, 13:13, 1 Corinthians, this is the greatest of all powers, the love. But I told you 2 weeks ago, when we talked about faith, that faith was the greatest power of all. So how can that be? Yeah, when we look at the quote and the context from what Paul was referring to, we will be able to get a greater understanding. First of all, to know how it plays into our understanding, we have to know that Paul wrote it. And Paul wrote this letter to the people of the town of Corinth, the church followers in the town of Corinth, because he wanted them, they asked him some questions, and he wanted to let them know how to act. And even though the letters of Paul make up a large portion of the Christian Bible, we need to know where Paul himself is coming from. Like the majority of Paul's writings, he was responding to a question, like I said, or situation that the people in the local community of Corinth were experiencing and wanting guidance on. The reason that many of Paul's letters were canonized, though, into the Bible is because that they were still very popular at the time of canonization. It's amazing to me, I find it very interesting, the new letters that we find written around the same time and even before that were not canonized because they were not as popular, or some of them were extremely popular in their local sects, but that local sect was closed off from the greater community, so they weren't even considered for canonization. The letters of Paul had been handed down and told, because everything, pretty much, not everybody read. In fact, the majority of people did not read. So they were told verbally over the years, over hundreds of years before they were canonized. So Paul, we admit, is a very good writer, who focused mainly, though, on the physical outcome and how to make his idea of Christianity come to fruition, similar to the idea of the law of attraction today. Nothing wrong with it, yet if we do not know the difference between what the law of attraction is and the law of mind action is, we will succumb to a fate of materiality only. We may be very successful here, but it's just materiality successful. In unity terms, Paul, for the most part, was led by his personality more than his individuality. Now, I don't want to denigrate Paul, because he was a great writer and did the best he could for his time. In Paul's defense, he was doing the best he could to explain to the people, in the physical sense, what living a spiritual life looks like, which we have to do. Every unity minister in the world tries to do that. But here, in the physical sense, though, he wanted to express love, but I want to tell you what he said before that in that same letter. In verse 2 of the same chapter 13, we read, "And though I have the gift of prophecy, and understand all mysteries, and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I can remove mountains, and have not love, I am nothing." Now, a couple of weeks ago when we had faith, we used a mountain-moving experience, didn't we?
Yes.
And it was a little bit different, though. Paul is referring to one of being so spiritually focused that he is no earthly good. The only way to express an understanding of our spirituality here on earth is as love, though. We have to love where there may be hate, and we may have a feeling of hate even. We have to love where there may be differences of personalities in our life. We have to love where there may be persecution. We have to love where there may be despair. We have to love where people have lost hope. We simply have to love. This is not a hard thing for any of us to do, though. Sometimes we think it is, but it isn't, because, believe it or not, you are love. You are love, period. When you go back to your natural state, you are love. When you were created in the image and likeness of God, you were created in the perfect expression of love. You are love, period. And nothing in the outer sense can, has, or will ever change that. You are love, never ending. Because like all the God-given powers that you have, that omnipresence is in you. It's one of your powers. No one or no thing can take that power away from you. You are love, and you will always be love. Like many of our powers, though, we sometimes forget where our power of love comes from. And I talked about this in faith. Many would say that the power of love comes from God. Yet, I want us to get a clearer understanding of where God is. We all will agree that God is omnipresent, everywhere present. Yet, sometimes we don't go to the closest connection that we have with God and our omnipresence, which is within ourselves. It's a part of us. We don't have to look outside of us to find that answer, to feel that omnipresence. And I know I'm not the only one that's guilty of that sometimes. I sometimes look outside of us. You know, when you've got a lot of physical things coming on you, sometimes you just do succumb to this and say, "Hey, God, please help me." And I'm talking to the God out here instead of saying, "God," I'm talking to the God, the same God, but the part of God that is in me, looking for the guidance and the answers, which is a more appropriate place to look for it. It's within ourselves. But when I'm clear, and no, I'm not talking about the other Church of Scientology, when I'm clear on my closest connection to God and my God source, it is within me. And I will get more immediate results when I focus my attention there. Last Sunday, I don't know if you remember, and it was a wonderful awakening for me because this has happened a few times in my life, and this is the first time it happened last week. But last Sunday, I don't know if you noticed, my left eye was pretty darn red. And I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, Francie and I don't remember when exactly, if it was right before we moved here or right after we moved here, I think it was right before. Anyway, I had somehow, some way, I have a flap in my eye. It's a kind of like a V cut, and I went to the ophthalmologist. Is that correct? How do you say it? And great one here in Tanya's across from the hospital. Anyway, she said the only way, she gave me some drops and said, it's kind of like, it's weird when you explain it, but it's kind of like glue that will glue that flap back down. But she said, use those drops. When it's healed, the only way we can take care of it is to laser surgery it. Or it's going to happen every 6 to 8 months. This flap's going to open up. Well, it opened up last Friday. And so Sunday, I was, or the Friday before last, I guess. So Sunday, I was in quite a bit of pain because it's really painful. I don't really care about the eye looking red, but the pain is, kind of gets to you a little bit. But by Sunday evening, it was really, really painful. And so when I went to bed, I always pray before I go to bed, and so I said, I'm not only going to pray for this to heal, I am going to use the power within me, that connection that I'm talking about that's closest to me with God, to heal this, and I want it, and I not only want it, but I expect it healed in the morning. I'm telling you, it worked. Amen. The eye was still red, but the hurt was no longer there. That is something. I mean, I know that we see this all the time, and Francie and I were talking about this just the other day, weren't we?
Yes.
About how this church, now it can happen anywhere, but this church, meaning you all, we have more percentage-wise miracles here as far as health-related than I've ever been associated with in any Unity church, and I've been in a lot of 55 years of Unity Church. It is wonderful. I mean, almost everybody in here has a healing story that has happened. And we're not talking small things, small potatoes. I was talking to Francie even yesterday about you, Bill. I mean, to think of your stamina yesterday. I know I wasn't here for that, but I want to thank everybody that was helping yesterday at the property, because we did a lot of work. And you're going to have to go out there, because taking that fence down, I knew it was going to make a difference, but I didn't know it was going to make such a difference. It's beautiful now. You can go see through there to that other part of the land, and it's just wonderful. So thank you all for doing that. But Bill has his own, as Rodney and a lot of people, and Will, a lot of people have miracle stories as far as health. But Bill had, throat, found it early, but he still had throat cancer. Is that what they actually call it? And he, had to slow down, had to do a lot of things, had to eat a lot of specific things. In fact, for a long time there, you were drinking your food instead of eating it. Long time. Yet now, yesterday, man, your stamina, whew, it's hard for me to keep up, I know that. It was great. It was wonderful. I love it. Now, I know that talking about healing, and me in particular, being in Unity all my life, should have known this, and as far as what happened last Sunday night, especially for myself, and speaking about it all the time from up here, yet I have found that sometimes it's much easier for me to see the truth in someone else than in myself. I can send that power, that truth to someone else. In fact, we do for sure every Wednesday on our prayers when we pray over those prayer slips. Because we don't see what you write down here. If you're praying for somebody, I'm just going to use an example, to heal a broken arm, we don't see that broken arm anymore. We see that person perfect and whole, the way that they actually are. Now, their physical outward expression may be a little bit different, but when they touch that center within them, that God within them that is a part of them, it's just going to be like my eye. It's not a deal anymore. It may take a little bit of time before it's totally healed and we can remove the cast, but it's no deal anymore. And it can happen anytime, anywhere with any of us. And I want all of us to have that. Of course, how do we get this, and how does that relate to love? Well, love is not exactly the same experience that you may think. When we look inside to get our healing, or look inside to get anything, which when we're looking inside to God, then we are looking at our closest connection to God, our true spiritual self, our true experience that's going to live beyond this body. So why don't we use it here and heal ourselves or anything else? Well, love is the same way. So has anybody else experienced that you can see the truth more than someone else? than yourself? I'm sure I'm not. I thought I wasn't the only one. But I want to go and pull, before I tell you exactly where love comes, or how to express love, because love expresses in many ways. But that's on an outer sense. But I want to relate a second Bible verse to you, and I want to share it with you because it's where Paul actually gets his basis for what he was talking about with the people of Corinth. It's from Matthew, and it also is a source of how I was able to heal myself. And from chapter 22, verses 37 through 40, it says, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first of the great commandment. And the second is like it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." And of course, I probably shouldn't have told you the chapter it came from, because you know it's from Jesus instead of from Paul. But that's where Paul pulled that, is from Jesus' teachings. Now, where did this come from? How come Jesus is saying this? Jesus is saying this to the Sadducees because the Pharisees, he had already shown up, and the Pharisees went to the Sadducees and said, "Hey, you got to get this guy." And so they came to him and they said, "You know what? What's the greatest law? Tell us that." And he told them what they wanted to hear in the first part, but that second part was something that they had not heard, because that was an outward expression of love, and even though that's all that they were doing, they weren't realizing that. So he told them in the first part, in verse 37, that that is what love is. And that relates directly to the power I talked to you about a couple of weeks ago, faith. While verse 39 is referring to the expression of our understanding of faith and our connection with God through love. I want us all to just take a second to paint a picture in your mind. Just, if you want to, close your physical eyes and open your spiritual eyes, and just take a moment and envision your idea of heaven, of pure love. Think of that in your mind, what it looks like to you. I'm sure it's a place of peace, of total peace and tranquility. No one is rushing here, no deadlines to meet, because everything works out in a timely, perfect manner. The people here are not adversaries. They are all helping each other in achieving greater heights of expression. As we allow ourselves to explore this place more, we see that there is a place for everyone to express their love in new and wondrous ways. As we gently bring ourselves back to this place, we bring the way of life, this same way of life, back with us. And the understanding of how to allow that in our understandings, in our surroundings. When we have that clearer picture that we just imagined in our mind, we can see that in ourselves and in others. Have you ever noticed how we see our neighbor, though? Because Jesus was referring to our neighbor on the outer expression of love. There are many neighbors in our life, and I'm sure that each one of us can name a few. There's some that occupy the house next door to us. There's the ones that live in the same city, Atlantans. And there are ones that live in the United States. And there are ones that live in other parts of the world. They are all our neighbors, yet sometimes we view them differently, don't we? Think of the churches that have missionary work all over the world. No matter their original intention, usually they do helpful work for those in need. But no matter what their original intention is, it does look different. And have you noticed those differences between how the churches treat their neighbors that we just described? Usually when a church does something in another part of the world, it is to make life better for the local people. And they do that by building a house for them to live in, digging a well for them to have water and irrigate their crops. And they all seem to have a gift or leave a gift that will last for many generations. Yet when those same churches, many of them try to treat and help our local community, what do? It's very common for them to set up a meal kitchen, hand out clothes, and sometimes even a food pantry. Although both are there and help people in other parts of the world and local communities, do you see the difference? They are both gifts are much appreciated by the recipients, and the intention is to give them in goodwill. I understand. But do you notice the difference between the two? It seems like the missionary work in other parts of the world are creating things that will last much longer than the ones given in our local communities. And I point this out not to degenerate or degrade, thank you, anybody that, or any missionary work, or the kindness of the people doing them, because I don't doubt that their expression of love is done as they know how to express it best right now. Yet I do want to point out that what we are thinking of the people that we are thinking that we are helping. Are we giving them a hand up, or are we giving someone a hand out? The other reason I wanted to look at this is because the fact that it currently is in our human condition that it is easier to help someone that we don't know than it is to help someone that we do know. Have you ever noticed that? Have you ever asked yourself why? I'm not getting on to anybody. I'm talking for myself mainly. If you've asked yourself that question, though, I bet you the answer has came to you quite easily. The answer is that I'm not as willing to help someone that I know because I don't agree with how they're living their life. I told them to do something to improve their life. They didn't listen to me, and they went ahead and did something else. Whatever the particulars are in that situation, I'm looking at it from my personality and making that decision instead of my individuality and seeing the Christ in them. In other words, in simpler terms, it is our ego making the decision and not our spirituality. It is very interesting how things written about in the Bible still are true today. And that's why it's such an important book. And that is because we are all humanity in this together. And the Bible is about humanity. The human existence can be a struggle even to the extent of it being a living hell if we want it to be. Some churches will teach you it is a living hell. You're not going to heaven till you do the right thing here. In fact, if you believe that, I want to offer to you, today only, we have a 25% discount on the bookstore, and we're going to give you that same discount to go to heaven today. Okay? So come see me or Reverend Francie. Reverend Francie, I need to tell you the price. And you will get a 25% discount. Now, of course, that doesn't guarantee you to the end of your life. That guarantees you right now. So if you died right now, that would happen. But, if you go along a week and you do something that, okay. Come see me, though. It's a green light special, blue light special, whichever store you're in. Yeah, when we awaken to the love that lives inside each of us, and when we realize where that source comes from and live from that source, we can live in heaven and be open to that same life for all others here and now. We don't have to wait after our supposed death. I never understood that anyway. If you're going to go to heaven and live after you die, what are you dying from? Anyway, I'm not going to get there. We're not going to go there. This is about love. And so I want to tell you the greatest part of love and what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. Love looks like a lot of things outside of us, doesn't it? You can have love for another outside and marry that person and live happily ever after, and that's a great expression of love. But what is it? How come it says love your neighbor as yourself? How come Jesus says that? When I love another, I kind of expressing love, but where's myself in that? Here's the difference. The difference is that if we don't love ourselves fully, then we can't love another fully. We really can't. We can't express at least all the love that we have to give to another. The reason that we have to love ourselves is because it prevents us from giving that love. Just like the example of the people that are close to us and the people that are strangers to us. of what we do for them. We can't look at anybody as being needy. We have to look at a fellow Christ spirit in their spiritual journey as being one along that same journey with them. No matter where they are and where we are. We're not better than them because we have $100,000 in the bank and they only have $1,000. That doesn't make us better than them. That makes us have more ability. We are expressing our Christ a little bit more right now, which is wonderful, and we can celebrate by sharing that. When we express the Christ within us, we don't have to worry about the outside stuff. When we live in that Christ, we don't have to worry about that. We have got it down here on the health side in this church. We have got that down. Let's keep doing it. Don't forget how to do it. But that works in all phases of our life. All phases of our life. We don't look at the spiritual or the physical condition. We look at the truth of each other. I am unlimited. You are unlimited in every way. Love, we have to love each other, but love ourselves first to be able to express that. God created you as love. And God has looked at you several times in your life and said each time, of this I am well pleased. No matter where you are in life, God has said that about you. Said that about you, wherever you are. Of this I am well pleased. I created you, and I am well pleased in what you're doing. Now, if you want more in your life, here it is. Come take it. It's all open to you. I'm well pleased with what you're doing now, and if you want more, take it. It's all yours. You are an ambassador of God here on earth. You were not created to be small. You were created to be bigger than even the life you're living now. You were created to shine your light so bright that everyone is attracted to it. And that's how we get into our relationships anyway. We're attracted to somebody else's light. We have to keep focusing on that light because we are sharing our light when we do that. During this Christmas season, we recall a star that led the kings and the wise men to the birth of the Christ. You are that light. That light leads to within you. You are also the Christ. Your full expression of God will show others the way to express their light, to realize that they are the Christ. When you are expressing love in your light shines brighter than any star in the distance. When you are expressing love in your life, the love that you are, the world is warmed by your glow. Let your light shine and know that you are love. God is blessing you now. Amen.